At 0100 hours, on February 3, 1943, German submarine U-223 fired a single torpedo into the starboard side of USAT Dorchester, a United States Army transport ship carrying 902 men, through the North Atlantic. The ship had 18 minutes before it would sink completely into water. That was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, a man in the water had 3 minutes before hypothermia rendered him unconscious. 6 minutes before death. 450 life jackets on board, 902 men. The mathematics were clear. Half the men on that ship would die. 4 military chaplains, 2 Protestant, 1 Catholic, 1 Jewish, stood on the tilting deck and made a decision that every survivor would remember for the rest of their lives. They removed their own life jackets and gave them to soldiers who had none. If you want to see how 4 men of God chose death so that others could live, and how their 27-minute sacrifice created a symbol of unity that transcends religion, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to the chaplains. George Lansing Fox was 42 years old in February 1943. Methodist minister from Lewistown, Pennsylvania. Average height, graying hair, kind eyes that had seen combat before. He had enlisted in the Army during World War I as an ambulance driver at age 18. He saw men die in France. He saw what war did to bodies and souls. After the war, he attended Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, became ordained as a Methodist minister in 1934. Fox married Isadore Hurlbut in 1923. They had 2 children. By 1942, Fox had a comfortable congregation in Gilman, Vermont. Small town, good people, safe job. He could have sat out World War II. He was 41 years old when Pearl Harbor happened. Too old for the draft, too settled for disruption. But Fox remembered World War I. He remembered watching young men die without spiritual comfort. He remembered thinking that soldiers needed chaplains more than civilians did. So in July 1942, despite his wife's concerns, despite his congregation's protests, George Fox joined the Army Chaplain Corps. His official rank was first lieutenant. His real job was keeping soldiers connected to God when everything else was falling apart. Alexander David Goode was 31 years old. Rabbi from Brooklyn, New York. Reformed Judaism. Dark hair. Intense eyes. A mind that questioned everything. He had grown up wanting to serve in World War I, but was too young. He watched that war from Brooklyn. Watching older boys march off to Europe. Watching some of them return broken. Watching others never return at all. Goode attended Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. Became ordained as a Reform rabbi in 1937. He married Teresa Flack. They had 1 daughter, Rosalie. By 1941, Goode had a congregation at Temple Beth Israel in York, Pennsylvania. Young congregation, growing membership, promising future. When World War II started, Goode was 29 years old, draft age. But rabbis received exemptions. Religious leaders could stay home. Goode refused the exemption. He volunteered for the Army Chaplain Corps in July 1941, 5 months before Pearl Harbor. His reasoning was simple. Jewish soldiers needed Jewish chaplains. Men facing death needed someone who understood their faith, their traditions, their prayers. The Army had Christian chaplains. It needed rabbis. Goode would be one of them. His rank was first lieutenant. His mission was serving Jewish soldiers. What he actually ended up doing was serving everyone. John Patrick Washington was 32 years old. Catholic priest from Newark, New Jersey. Irish ancestry. Strong build. The kind of voice that commanded attention in a room. He had been ordained in 1935 at age 24. Young for a priest. Brilliant student. The diocese had plans for him. Washington served at St. Stephen's Church in Arlington, New Jersey. Working-class parish. Immigrant families. Good people who needed spiritual guidance. He was effective there. Popular. His bishop wanted him to stay and build the parish. But Washington watched young men from his congregation join the military after Pearl Harbor. He watched mothers cry when their sons left. He watched fathers try to be stoic and fail. He knew these boys would face combat. He knew they would need priests. In May 1942, Washington requested permission from his bishop to join the Army Chaplain Corps. The bishop refused. The parish needed him. The community needed him. Let other priests go to war. Washington asked again. The bishop refused again. Washington asked a third time. He explained that soldiers needed confession before battle, needed communion before death, needed someone to tell them their sins were forgiven before they died. The bishop finally agreed. In November 1942, Washington joined as a first lieutenant, Catholic chaplain. His job was administering sacraments. His calling was being present when men needed God most. Clark Vandersall Poling was 32 years old, Dutch Reformed minister from Columbus, Ohio. Tall, athletic, the kind of man who looked like he should be playing football instead of preaching sermons. His father, Daniel Poling, was a famous minister, president of the World's Christian Endeavor Union. Clark grew up in ministry. He knew what it meant to serve. Poling graduated from Rutgers University in 1933, attended Yale Divinity School, became ordained in the Dutch Reformed Church, and he married Betty Jane Vandersall. They had one son, Clark Jr., called Corky. By 1942, Poling had a congregation at the First Reformed Church in Schenectady, New York. Young church, active membership, bright future. Poling's father had been a chaplain in World War I. Clark grew up hearing stories about military service, about soldiers who needed spiritual guidance, about the importance of chaplains sharing the dangers their congregations faced. When World War II started, Clark Poling decided to follow his father's path. He volunteered for the Army Chaplain Corps in June 1942. His wife did not want him to go. His son was only 3 years old. His congregation needed him, but Poling believed that chaplains should share the risks soldiers faced, that spiritual leaders who stayed safe while their people died were hypocrites. His rank was first lieutenant. His conviction was that ministry meant being present in danger, not just in comfort. The four chaplains met for the first time in January 1943 at the Army Chaplain School at Harvard University. The military had established the school to train religious leaders for military service. 30 days of intensive instruction covering military protocol, shipboard procedures, how to conduct services in combat conditions, how to counsel soldiers facing death. The Army assigned chaplains to training classes without regard for denomination. Fox, the Methodist, Goode, the Rabbi, Washington, the Catholic priest, and Poling, the Dutch Reformed minister, ended up in the same class of 40 chaplains. They sat together during the first orientation session, not by design, just chance. 4 men in their 30s and 40s, all wearing the same uniform, all carrying the same mission, all facing the same uncertain future. During lunch that first day, they discovered they had more in common than their uniforms. All 4 had volunteered for service. All 4 had families asking them not to go. All 4 believed that soldiers needed spiritual guidance more than comfortable congregations did. They became friends quickly, not just colleagues, actual friends. They ate meals together. They studied together. They walked around Cambridge discussing theology and philosophy, and what it meant to serve God in the middle of war. Their theological discussions were intense. Fox, the Methodist, emphasized personal relationship with Jesus Christ through faith alone. Washington, the Catholic, emphasized the sacramental system, the necessity of the church, the importance of priestly authority. Goode, the Rabbi, emphasized Torah, tradition, the covenant between God and Israel. Poling, the Reformed minister, emphasized the sovereignty of God, predestination, the absolute authority of Scripture. They disagreed on almost every major doctrine, but they agreed on the fundamentals. God was real, service mattered, sacrifice was the highest form of love, and soldiers facing death needed chaplains who actually believed what they preached. The training lasted 30 days. When it ended in February 1943, the Army gave all 4 chaplains their assignments. They would ship out immediately. Destination, Greenland. Mission, providing spiritual support for troops.
building weather stations and airfields in the Arctic, and they would all travel on the same ship, USAT Dorchester, departing New York on January 23. USAT Dorchester, departing New York on January 23, 5,192 gross tons, 368 feet long, 54 feet wide. Originally designed to carry 300 passengers in comfort between New York and Miami, the Army converted it to a troop transport and stripped out the luxury cabins, installed bunk beds, crammed in as many soldiers as the hull could carry, maximum capacity, 900 men plus crew. By February 1943, the Dorchester had made several transport runs without incident. The crew was experienced. The captain, Hans Danielson, was a merchant marine veteran with 20 years at sea. He knew the North Atlantic. He knew the dangers. The ship departed New York on January 23, 1943, as part of Convoy SG-19, 3 merchant ships carrying supplies, 2 troop transports carrying soldiers, 3 Coast Guard cutters providing escort protection, 902 men aboard the Dorchester. Most were young enlisted soldiers, heading to Greenland to build facilities, engineers, construction workers, radio operators, weathermen, support troops, not combat infantry. The 4 chaplains shared a cabin on the upper deck, small room, 4 bunks, cramped conditions, but they made it work. They established a routine quickly. Fox held Protestant services in the forward mess hall every morning. Washington held Catholic Mass in the aft compartment in the afternoon. Goode held Jewish services in the mid-deck recreation area. Friday evenings, polling helped all 3, filling in wherever needed. The soldiers appreciated having chaplains aboard. Even men who never attended religious services at home found themselves showing up on the ship. Something about being surrounded by cold ocean and knowing German submarines were hunting you made people think about God. The chaplains counseled soldiers constantly. Young men worried about dying, married men worried about widows, fathers worried about orphans. The chaplains listened, they prayed, they offered whatever comfort they could. The convoy sailed north through relatively calm seas for the first 10 days. Routine voyage. No submarine contacts. No incidents. By February 2nd, they were 100 miles south of Greenland, almost at their destination. That's when the danger increased. German submarine U-223 had been hunting in those waters for 3 weeks. Type 7C U-boat, 220 feet long, 20 feet wide, crew of 48. Commander Carl Jürgen Wetscher. U-223 departed its base at Saint-Nazaire, France, on January 5, 1943. Mission: patrol the waters south of Greenland, attack Allied shipping, disrupt supply lines to North America. The submarine had sunk 1 merchant vessel on January 15th, damaged another on January 23rd. By February 2nd, Wetscher was searching for additional targets. At 1400 hours on February 2nd, U-223's sonar operator detected convoy SG-19, multiple ships, moving north at slow speed. Perfect target. Wetscher tracked the convoy throughout the afternoon, staying submerged, following at 3,000 yards distance. He waited for darkness. Submarines attacked at night. On the surface they were faster, could maneuver better, could close range for torpedo sheds. At 2200 hours, February 2nd, U-223 surfaced. Wetscher ordered the submarine to full speed, closing distance to the convoy. By 2330 hours, they were within torpedo range. Wetscher studied the convoy through his periscope. 5 ships visible, 2 were troop transports, high-value targets. The second ship in formation was largest, UST Dorchester. Wetscher ordered torpedo tubes 1 and 2 prepared. He would fire both torpedoes at the large transport, double the chance of a hit. At 0058 hours on February 3rd, Wetscher gave the firing order. 2 torpedoes launched from U-223 G-7E electric torpedoes, 21 feet long, 795-pound warheads, speed 30 knots, range 5,000 yards. The torpedoes ran silent through the black water, no wake, no sound, just 2 projectiles carrying enough explosive to tear apart any merchant vessel afloat. At 0100 hours on February 3, 1943, the first torpedo struck USAT Dorchester, on the starboard side, below the waterline, amidships. The warhead detonated on contact. 795 pounds of Torpex explosive converted instantly to expanding gas and shock wave. The explosion tore a hole 30 feet wide in the Dorchester's hull. Seawater rushed into the breached compartments at a rate of thousands of gallons per second. The ship's lights failed immediately. Emergency generators kicked in, providing partial power. The vessel began listing to starboard. The explosion killed approximately 100 men instantly. Soldiers sleeping in bunks near the impact point died from blast overpressure before they knew what happened. Others drowned in their bunks as seawater flooded compartments faster than they could escape. Captain Danielson was on the bridge when the torpedo hit. He felt the impact, saw the lights fail, felt the ship tilt. His first order was to send a distress signal. Radio operator transmitted SOS with position coordinates. Then Danielson ordered all hands to abandon ship. The problem was immediate and obvious. The Dorchester carried exactly 450 life jackets for 902 men on board. The Army had equipped the ship with insufficient safety equipment. Someone in logistics had calculated that in an emergency, men could share life jackets or grab Rabbi. That calculation was about to kill hundreds of men. The water temperature was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, hypothermia sets in rapidly. A man in the water without a life jacket would lose consciousness in 3 minutes. Death would follow in 6 minutes. Even with a life jacket, survival time was limited to perhaps 15 or 20 minutes before cold water-induced cardiac arrest. The mathematics were brutal. 450 life jackets, 902 men. The Dorchester would sink in approximately 20 minutes based on the rate of flooding. That meant roughly 450 men would make it into the water alive with life jackets. 450 more would either drown going down with the ship or die of hypothermia within minutes of entering the water. Half the men on that ship were going to die. The only question was which half. The 4 chaplains were in their cabin when the torpedo hit. The explosion threw them from their bunks. The cabin lights failed. Emergency lighting provided dim illumination. The ship tilted. They knew immediately what had happened. Torpedo strike. The ship was sinking. They had minutes. Doc spoke first. "We need to get topside. Help with evacuation." The 4 men dressed quickly. In the darkness, they grabbed their Bibles. They left everything else. Personal belongings didn't matter. The men outside needed help. They climbed to the main deck at 0104 hours. Chaos surrounded them. Soldiers running in every direction, some trying to reach lifeboat stations, others searching for life jackets, many just standing frozen, unable to process what was happening. The ship's crew was attempting to launch lifeboats. The process was difficult. The ship was listing 15 degrees to starboard. Lifeboats on the port side couldn't launch properly. Lifeboats on the starboard side were too close to the water. Panic made everything harder. The 4 chaplains split up immediately. They moved through the crowd of soldiers, trying to create order from chaos. Fox found a group of young soldiers clustered near a bulkhead, paralyzed with fear. He spoke to them calmly. "Follow me to the lifeboat station. Stay together. Help each other." Washington found soldiers fighting over life jackets. He physically separated them. There's enough for everyone who stays calm. He lied. There wasn't enough. But panic would kill everyone faster. Goode found a soldier, having a complete breakdown, screaming, unable to function. Goode grabbed him by the shoulders. Look at me. Breathe. You're going to survive this, but you need to move now. Poling found soldiers, trying to go below decks to retrieve personal belongings. He blocked their path. The ship is sinking. You have minutes. Leave everything. Get topside now. The chaplains worked for 10 minutes, organizing soldiers, directing them to lifeboat stations, helping launch boats, maintaining some semblance of order in the chaos. Then they noticed the problem. Young soldiers, standing on deck. No life jackets. Tear in their eye. They had searched the storage lockers. The life jackets were gone. The life jackets. DOS 450 life jackets. Distributed to 902 men. The mathematics had played out. These soldiers had nothing. At 01:15 hours. Approximately 15 minutes after the torpedo strike. The 4 chaplains stood together near the starboard rail. Around them, soldiers, but life jackets waited for death. The ship was sinking faster now. The list had increased to 25 degrees. Water was visible on the lower decks. George Fox looked at the young soldiers. Teenagers, mostly. 19, 20 years old. Boys who should have been in college or working first jobs. Instead, they were on a sinking ship in the North Atlantic, 3 minutes away from freezing to death in 36-degree water. Fox was wearing a life jacket. So were the other 3 chaplains. They had grabbed them automatically when they dressed standard procedure. The life jackets could keep them alive long enough for the Coast Guard cutters to rescue them. Maybe 20 minutes in the water. Maybe 30 if they were strong. Fox looked at Goode, then Washington, then Poling. No words were spoken, but all 4 men understood what needed to happen next. George Fox removed his life jackets. A young private stood next to him, no more than 19 years old. No life jackets. Absolute terror in his eyes. Fox handed his life jacket to the kid. Take this. The private stared at him. But sir, you need. I won't be needing it. Put it on. The private tried to refuse. Fox was older, married, had children. The kid was nobody. He didn't deserve to live more than the chaplain did. Fox insisted. He helped the kid put on the life jacket, tightened the straps, checked the fit, get to a lifeboat. You're going to be fine. The private stumbled away, heading for the nearest lifeboat station. Alexander Goode removed his life jackets. A soldier nearby, maybe 20 years old, watched in disbelief as Goode offered him the jacket. "I can't take that," the soldier said. "You can. You will," Goode replied. "That's an order." The soldier took the life jackets. Goode helped him secure it. The soldier tried to thank him. Goode waved him away. "Just survive. That's enough." John Washington, Duck, removed his life jackets. A young Catholic private stood nearby, crossing himself repeatedly, praying Hail Marys, preparing for death. Duck, Washington approached him. "Son, you need this more than I do." The private recognized Washington. He had attended the chaplain's mass 2 days earlier. He knew Washington was a priest. He knew priests had special status in Catholic theology. Seeing a priest give away his life jackets, That broke something in the kid's mind. Father, I can't. Put it on, Washington said gently. Dad has a plan for you. This is part of it. The private put on the life jacket. Washington gave him a blessing. The sign of the cross over him. Told him to get to safety. Tuck Poling. That removed his life jackets. A soldier from Ohio, same state as Poling, stood nearby. The soldier had attended polling services. He knew the chaplain. Poling tended him the life jackets that the soldier tried to refuse. Poling, that wouldn't, that what life, Poling said. You haven't lived yours yet. Take it. The soldier took the jackets. He would survive the sink. He would spend the rest of his life telling people about the minister. Gave him a life jacket.
At 01:20 hours, 18 minutes after the torpedo strike, the 4 chaplains stood together on the tilting deck of the Dorchester. No life jacket, no chance of survival. The ship was going down. They were going with it. They could have jumped into the water, could have tried to swim to a lifeboat, could have grabbed floating debris, could have fought for their lives. They didn't. Instead, they linked arms. 4 men, 4 faiths, standing together. Soldiers abandoning ship saw them, saw the chaplains standing there, arms linked, and the soldiers heard singing. The chaplains were singing hymns, Protestant hymns, Catholic hymns, Jewish prayers, everything mixed together. Voices raised against the sound of rushing water, and screaming men and the death groans of a dying ship. Private William Bednar, wearing George Fox's life jacket, looked back from a lifeboat. He saw the 4 chaplains. He heard the singing. He would remember that image for the next 70 years of his life. Grady Clark, a young soldier, wearing Alexander Goode's life jacket, jumped into the water and swam toward a rescue boat. He looked back once, saw the chaplains still standing there, still together. John Mahoney, wearing John Washington's life jacket, climbed into a lifeboat. He watched the ship sinking. He saw the chaplains on the deck. He realized they had chosen to die so he could live. The survivors in the water and in the lifeboats all reported seeing the same thing in the final moments. 4 chaplains, standing together, arms linked, singing, praying. As the ship went down, they were still there, still together. At 01:27 hours, 27 minutes after the torpedo hit, the Dorchester's bow dipped below the surface. The stern rose into the air. The ship slid beneath the waves. The 4 chaplains went with it. George Lansing Fox, Alexander David Goode, John Patrick Washington, Clark Vandersall, Poling. They died together. The 3 Coast Guard cutters, escorting convoy SG-19, responded immediately to the Dorchester's distress signal. USCGC, Comanche, USCGC, Escanaba, and USCGC, Tampa converged on the sinking position. The cutters began picking up survivors at 01:35 hours. Men in lifeboats, men floating with life jackets, men clinging to debris. The water was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Men were dying of hypothermia every minute. The Coast Guard crews worked frantically, lowering cargo nets, pulling men from the water, performing first aid, wrapping survivors in blankets, starting fires to warm them. But time was the enemy. Even men wearing life jackets were losing consciousness from cold. Men in the water for more than 20 minutes had almost no chance. Their core body temperatures had dropped too low. Cardiac arrest was inevitable. By 02:30 hours, the Coast Guard cutters had rescued 230 men from the Dorchester. No more survivors could be found. The cutters searched for another hour, hoping to find anyone still alive. They found bodies, hundreds of bodies, floating face down in life jackets, dead from hypothermia.
The final count came later that morning. 902 men had been aboard the Dorchester. 230 survived. 672 died. The 4 chaplains were among the dead. Every survivor who could speak told stories about the chaplains, about how they organized the evacuation, about how they calmed panicked soldiers, about how they gave away their life jackets. Private William Bednar told his rescuers about George Fox, how Fox had removed his life jacket and given it to him, how Fox had insisted, how Fox had said, "I won't be needing it," like it was the most natural thing in the world. Grady Clark told his story about Alexander Goode, how Goode had literally placed the life jacket on him, how Goode had ordered him to take it, how Goode had smiled and said, "Just survive. That's enough." John Mahoney couldn't stop talking about John Washington, how Washington had given him a blessing along with the life jacket, how Washington had told him God had a plan for him, how Washington had died so Mahoney could discover that plan. The soldier from Ohio, whose name was never recorded, told everyone about Clark Poling, about how Poling had said, "I've lived my life. You haven't lived yours yet," about how Poling had insisted he take the jacket. But the most powerful testimony came from the survivors, who had looked back at the ship in its final moments. More than 30 men reported seeing the same thing. 4 chaplains standing together, arms linked, singing, praying, going down with the ship. One survivor, Petty Officer John J. Mahoney, wrote in his report, "I could hear men crying, pleading, praying. I could also hear the chaplains preaching courage. Their voices were the only thing that made sense in all that chaos." Another survivor, Private First Class William Bednar, wrote, "They had every right to live. They chose to die so we could survive. I don't understand that kind of love, but I've spent my whole life trying to be worthy of it." The Coast Guard investigation concluded that the 4 chaplains had given away their life jackets to soldiers who had none, that they had remained on the ship voluntarily, that they had died together. News of the 4 chaplains reached the United States within days. The story captured national attention immediately. 4 men of different faiths, unified in sacrifice. It was a powerful symbol during a war that was dividing the world along every possible line. The Army posthumously awarded all 4 chaplains the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross. The citations praised their extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty. But many felt that wasn't enough. Soldiers who had been on the Dorchester petitioned the government to award the chaplains the Medal of Honor. The campaign gained widespread support. Newspapers editorialized in favor. Citizens wrote letters to Congress. The problem was technical. Medal of Honor regulations required that the heroism occur in direct combat with an enemy force. The chaplains had died in a sinking, not in battle. Technically, they didn't qualify. Congress found a solution. In 1960, they created a new award specifically for the 4 chaplains. The 4 chaplains Medal for Heroism. It was a special medal, created by an act of Congress, equivalent in precedence to the Medal of Honor. George Fox, Alexander Goode, John Washington, and Clark Poling received the 4 chaplains medal posthumously, and their families attended the ceremony at the Pentagon. But the real recognition came from something else, from the symbol they created, the 4 Chaplains Memorial Foundation. Its mission was to preserve the memory of the chaplains and promote interfaith cooperation, tolerance, and service. The foundation built the Chapel of the 4 Chaplains at Temple University in Philadelphia. The chapel features stained glass windows depicting the 4 men. It hosts interfaith services. It teaches young people about sacrifice and unity. The United States Postal Service issued a 3-cent stamp in 1948, honoring the 4 chaplains. The image showed the chaplains standing together on the sinking ship. Churches, synagogues, and temples across America installed plaques honoring the 4 chaplains. VFW posts hung their photographs. Schools taught their story. But perhaps the most important legacy was the example they set. 4 men of different faiths, unified in sacrifice. At a time when religious division seemed absolute, the 4 chaplains proved that shared values mattered more than theological differences. George Fox believed Jesus Christ was the only path to salvation. Alexander Goode believed the Torah was God's eternal covenant with Israel. John Washington believed the Catholic Church held unique authority from Peter. Clark Poling believed in predestination and Reformed doctrine. They disagreed on fundamental theology, but on February 3, 1943, when it mattered most, they stood together. That image of 4 men, arms linked, going down with the ship, became one of the most powerful symbols of World War II. It represented unity, despite differences, sacrifice for others, faith demonstrated through action, rather than words.
George Fox's wife, Isadore, received notification of his death on February 8, 1943. She was 40 years old. She had begged him not to join the military. He had insisted. Now he was gone. Isadore spent the rest of her life promoting her husband's memory. She attended memorial services. She spoke at churches. She told people about George's character, his faith, his decision to serve. She never remarried. She died in 1989 at age 86. Their daughter Mary was 16 when her father died. She grew up hearing stories about what he did. She became a teacher, spent her career educating young people about service and sacrifice. Alexander Goode's wife, Teresa, received notification on February 8. She was 28 years old with a young daughter. Her husband had volunteered for service despite having an exemption. Now Rosalie would grow up without a father. Teresa never remarried. She raised Rosalie alone. She attended every memorial service for the 4 chaplains. She made sure people knew that Alexander had been a good man, a devoted father, someone who believed faith meant action. Rosalie Goode grew up surrounded by her father's legacy. She became an advocate for interfaith cooperation. She spent decades speaking about the 4 chaplains, ensuring their story remained alive. John Washington's parents received notification on February 8. They were elderly. Their son had been their pride. Brilliant student, devoted priest. Gone at 32. The Catholic Church in Newark held a memorial mass. Hundreds attended. Archbishop Thomas Walsh spoke about Washington's devotion to duty and his ultimate sacrifice. Washington's parish, St. Stephen's Church, installed a memorial plaque. It read, "Father John P. Washington gave his life jacket to a soldier on a sinking ship. Greater love has no man than this." Clark Poling's wife, Betty Jane, received notification on February 8. She was 31 years old with a 3-year-old son. Clark Jr., called Corky, would grow up without his father. Betty Jane never remarried. She raised Corky alone. She maintained correspondence with the other 3 families. She attended every memorial service for the 4 chaplains. Corky Poling grew up hearing stories about his father. He joined the Air Force, served in Vietnam, spent his career in military service. He said he was trying to live up to his father's example. He died in 2013, having spent 70 years carrying his father's legacy. William Bednar survived the war. He returned to Pennsylvania, married, raised 4 children. He told his children about George Fox, about how Fox had given him a life jacket, and told him, "I won't be needing it." Bednar attended 4 chaplains, memorial services every year until his death in 2001 at age 77. He told reporters, "I've lived 58 years that I shouldn't have lived. Every day is a gift from Chaplain Fox. I've tried to make those days worth his sacrifice." John Mahoney survived the war. He remained in the military, retiring as a master sergeant in 1965. He attended Catholic Mass every Sunday for 62 years. He told his priest that he owed his life to Father Washington. Mahoney spoke at schools about the 4 chaplains. He told students, "Heroism isn't about being brave when you're scared. It's about choosing to die so someone else can live. That's what Father Washington did for me." Grady Clark survived the war. He became a teacher in North Carolina. He taught his students about the 4 chaplains. Every year, He wore a bracelet with Alexander Goode's name engraved on it. He was buried with that bracelet in 1998. Of the 230 survivors from the Dorchester, at least 40 men wore life jackets given to them by the 4 chaplains. All 40 spent the rest of their lives telling the story. All 40 attended memorial services when they could. All 40 made sure their children and grandchildren knew what happened on February 3, 1943. On February 3, 1951, the United States dedicated a permanent memorial to the 4 chaplains. The memorial was built at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, a simple stone monument with bronze plaques bearing the names of all 672 men who died on the Dorchester. But the centerpiece was a bronze sculpture of the 4 chaplains, standing together, arms linked, wearing their uniforms, no life jackets. The inscription read, "These immortal chaplains, Lieutenant George L. Fox, Methodist Lieutenant Alexander D. Goode, Jewish Lieutenant John P. Washington, Catholic Lieutenant Clark Poling, Reformed, Interfaith, Cooperation, Service, Sacrifice." February 3, 1943. Every year on February 3, survivors and their families gather at that memorial. Veterans organizations attend. Religious leaders from all faiths come together. They remember 4 men who proved that unity matters more than division. The ceremony always includes readings from 4 different traditions: Methodist, Catholic, Jewish, Reformed. Different words, different prayers, but the same message. Love means sacrifice. Faith means action. Service means putting others first. The 4 chaplains understood that, and on February 3, 1943, in 18 minutes of chaos and terror on a sinking ship in the North Atlantic, they proved it. The story of the 4 chaplains has been told thousands of times. It has been simplified, romanticized, turned into legend. Some versions exaggerate details. Some versions add elements that didn't happen. But the core truth remains undeniable. 4 military chaplains gave their life jackets to soldiers who had none. 4 men chose death so others could live. 4 different faiths unified in the ultimate sacrifice. 672 men died on the Dorchester. The 4 chaplains were not the only heroes that night. Coast Guard crews risked their lives, pulling men from freezing water. Soldiers helped each other reach lifeboats. Men shared life jackets, even though it meant both might die. Heroism happened all over that ship in those 27 minutes. But what the 4 chaplains did was different. They weren't reacting to circumstances. They weren't making split-second decisions. Under pressure, they had time to think, time to choose, time to consider the implications. George Fox was 42 years old, married, father of 2. He had every reason to keep his life jacket. No one would have blamed him, but he chose to give it away. Alexander Goode was 31 years old, married, father of 1. He had a future. He had a congregation waiting for him. He chose to die instead. John Washington was 32 years old, a Catholic priest, someone his church had invested years in training. His life had value beyond just himself. He gave it away anyway. Clark Poling was 32 years old, married, father of a 3-year-old boy who would grow up without a father. That choice carried consequences. He made it anyway. 4 men, 4 faiths, 4 life jackets, given away, 4 deaths, chosen voluntarily. That's not legend. That's documented history. 40 survivors testified to it. Coast Guard investigations confirmed it. The story is real. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives. Every single day, stories about chaplains who chose death over life. Stories about sacrifice that transcends religion. Stories about men who proved
That faith means more than words. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure George Fox, Alexander Goode, John Washington, and Clark Poling don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.